Hey, Rob from Order 42 here, and today we're going to look at Disney's announcement that they made on Tuesday, March 23rd, that basically shook up their whole release slate for like the rest of 2021. There's a lot of changes, and especially some really surprising things that they decided to do with Disney Plus and Premier Access. So, what are they thinking? Well, let's dig into it and see if we can find out. So, what they've decided is that they're going to shift all of their movies, all the slate of movies that were scheduled to release. We're going to shift all those, and then we're going to also, at the same time, Cruella and Black Widow will have a simultaneous release on Disney Plus Premier Access, the $30 thing, alongside your Disney Plus subscription, and a theatrical release at the same time. It's wow. We didn't see this coming, especially since Kevin Feige had said back at the Disney Investor Day a few months ago, they are committed to a theatrical release for their movies. So all Marvel movies were supposed to have a theatrical release. Apparently something has changed. So let's look at the changes. So Cruella is still going to be coming out on May 28th. Again, kind of both, right? Theaters and Disney Plus Premier Access. Black Widow has now moved from May 7th to July 9th. Again, Disney Plus Premier Access alongside theaters. Then they've moved Free Guy, the Ryan Reynolds gaming movie that looks actually pretty funny. That's moved from May 21st to August 13th. We have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is the new Marvel movie, which I'm very, very excited for this one. It's moved from July 9th, where Black Widow has moved to September 3rd. Then we've got The King's Man, which is the sequel to Kingsman, right? That was supposed to be released back in 2019, if you can believe that. It's now moved from August 20th to December 22nd, so almost 2 years after it was scheduled to be released. Deep Water, which is a movie with Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas. That one is a Fox property, a Fox movie. There's not a whole lot of information, at least that I can find on that. I don't think there's been a trailer yet. But anyway, that's moving from August 13th to January 14th of 2022. Then finally, Death on the Nile, which is basically Kenneth Branagh's sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. That's moving from September 17th to February 11th, 2022. So this is a really, really interesting thing, right? I mean, why the change now? I mean, we've had this news that Regal is actually going to start opening their theaters in early April. We've heard really good things about the openings, the reopenings of theaters, I should say, in Los Angeles and New York. Those are starting to slowly, ramp up and start to be a thing. I think what we have to look at is we have to look at the numbers that Disney Plus has, or Disney, I guess, has gotten from the release of Mulan, the Premier Access there, and then for Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, it must have shown a lot of promise. It must have, because the box office for Raya and the Last Dragon has been pretty low. I think it's $31 million worldwide, which is, nothing. You could have expected that 31 million would have been the opening box office in the US, and that's at the low end, right? So I really think that that's what they're looking at. The weird thing that I think about all of this is that with Disney Plus and HBO Max and all of the other ones, right? All of the other ones where they're releasing movies on there, they can talk about numbers all they want, but they don't. They say, oh, well, Falcon and Winter Soldier has had more eyes on it than WandaVision did. Okay, where's the proof? They can say whatever they want. I'm not saying that they're being disingenuous. I'm just saying that there's really no way for us to gauge how well something is really doing. You've got the box office numbers because you've got this intermediary between the studios and what actually gets purchased, with box office numbers. So they must have some idea that this is the better way to go. They must have looked at those numbers and said, yeah, it's better for us to do, to release them theatrically and try to leverage our Disney Plus subscribers, because the lower capacities in theaters can't reach what we want for these movies. I don't think anybody would say that Mulan and Raya and the Last Dragon, which was their first two of the Premiere Access, I guess, trials, I guess you could say. I don't think anybody would argue that those would have lit up the box office, but they definitely would have made more money if the theaters were open as normal, but that just wasn't the case. I believe that they must have some sort of way to gauge the interest in these movies, and they realize that even with the interest where it doesn't make sense that if the theaters are at lower capacities, not all of them are open, they're not going to be able to hit the numbers they want to meet. And at the same time, they can at least use that to leverage the amount of Disney Plus subscribers they already have. There's got to be some sort of talks in between Disney and the theater owners because, you look at Cinemark. I mean, they flat out refused to play Raya and the Last Dragon, and that probably would have been pretty good for Disney, right? But there must have been some sort of talks that broke down at the last minute because you have to believe that Cinemark would have wanted Raya and the Last Dragon in their theaters. I mean, they would have brought people in. I mean, my thing is that they've got to be making deals with the theater owners. And I'm not saying that giving them cuts of the views off of Disney Plus. I mean, come on, they're not going to do that. But what they could do is say, hey, well, if you play our movies in your theaters, we'll give you a larger cut of the revenue from the box office than we normally would. That would hopefully entice the theater owners to not only play the movies in their theaters, but promote them more. Put them on their front page and say, hey, you can come see the latest Disney movie here at Cinemark or whatever theater. I think that's the main thing here. I mean, when Warner did their thing, right? And when they announced that their entire 2021 slate was going to HBO Max day and date with theaters, it made a lot of people mad. Not just the directors and the actors and all that, but the theater owners as well. They must have put some things in place, some deals in place with those theater owners to make sure that they were taken care of, because we haven't heard anybody complaining, and on top of that, I think customers, people have been really, really excited and very pleased with what they've been getting from HBO Max. So it's an interesting thing, and it's going to just continue. They're going to continue to try to figure out the best way to make the money that they need to make for these things to be profitable. Now, this was put together by Quartz. I thought this was really, really helpful to look at the big budget movie releases through the first half of 2021. Kind of gives you an idea of what to look forward to. March 31st, just a few days away, we got Godzilla vs. Kong. Of course, that is going to be in theaters and HBO Max simultaneously. 2.5 weeks after that, we've got Mortal Kombat, same thing, theaters and HBO Max. Very, very excited for both of those. May 28th, we've got Quiet Place Part 2 from Paramount. Now, what they've decided to do is give that 45-day window. We had just talked about that a couple of videos back. I mean, it's kind of a cool thing because it gives those theaters the exclusivity for that movie for that period. So, look, I think the theaters are probably saying, yeah, it's better than nothing at this point. And of course, Cruella, we just talked about, May 28th, simultaneous to Disney Plus with the Premiere Access. June 11th, we've got In the Heights. That's Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's a musical. That's going to be Warner Brothers again. So theaters, HBO Max. And then this one we hadn't even talked about yet. June 18th is when Luca was going to come out. And guess what? It's just going to Disney Plus. No theaters. It's just going direct to Disney Plus, just like Soul did. So this is a really interesting thing. The theaters are probably going to be pretty mad about this because they're like, look, I mean, we need families coming back to the theaters. This was a good chance. Disney said, nope, going direct to Disney Plus. So that's an interesting move. June 25th, we've got Fast 9 from Universal. And again, with Universal, they've got that 17-day window and then a 31-day window based on the box office. So if it hits a certain amount, it'll stay for another 2 weeks, basically. So that's an interesting thing. And of course, we just talked about Venom 2 being pushed back to September because of Fast 9 moving to June 25th. So there we go. Then July 2nd, I mean, come on. How many people are looking forward to Top Gun Maverick? I know I am. It's Paramount. Again, a 45-day window, exclusivity. in theaters for those 45 days. Really excited about that one. And finally, we have July 9th, Black Widow, the simultaneous release with theaters and Disney Plus. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. A lot of great stuff coming. I think it's clear, looking at that list, the studios are willing to experiment, with these releases, and it's just really kind of curious that they would decide to do that with Black Widow, considering all of what they've said before. But yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to look forward to. It's just, how soon will the theaters be open to capacity to where it makes sense for them to say, you know what, we're just gonna release the theaters. We're not gonna be doing the simultaneous releases on our streaming services. We're just gonna depend on theaters. How soon will that happen? Now, recently Warner has said that starting in 2022, there's going to be a 45-day window. So they're kind of going the same way as Paramount here, starting in 2022. So they've got to have these metrics that they can look at and say, this is where we think things are going to go. It makes more sense for us to do this Disney Plus thing, plus the theaters. I mean, they've got to know where they are. And this is, for at least for them right now, based on what we know, this is the best option for them. This is how I've been thinking about it. Okay. I'm thinking about Black Widow and Cruella. Okay. Cruella, I got to be honest, Premiere Access, I don't care that much. I just don't, right? It's not going to be, that's not a movie for me, right? But because I'm wanting to get back into theaters, I could see myself going to, say, a matinee to go watch it just so I can review it. With Black Widow, that's a different one. That's a different story. I've been looking forward to Black Widow for a long time, number one. Number two, it's one of those kind of situations where you kind of have to play the numbers in your head, right? It's almost like, do I rent the movie or do I buy the movie, right? With digital or even Blu-rays, anything like that, where you're kind of like, okay, I can pay the, say, $8 to go watch Black Widow in the theater. But then if I want to watch it again, I have to pay another $8 or $10 or however much it is. Or I could just get it on Disney Plus for $30 and I can just watch it however many times I want. See, that's one of those things where I think they're looking at that kind of thing. The people that do the Premiere Access, how many times are they watching it? Are they only watching it once? Or I think they've got to have those kinds of metrics. I kind of wish that those were available to the public so we could kind of gauge alongside them what their decisions may be, And then, of course, they've probably got to be looking at trailer views and the amount of people that tweet about it. All of those things have come into play to make those kinds of decisions. So what do you think about all this? You saw the list. How many of these movies are you like, oh man, I really want to get into the theater and see that? Or are you kind of like me and thinking, you know what? If I have the option to watch it at home, I may just do that. Let me know down below what you think about all this. And yeah, I guess that about wraps it up today. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.